America, a paradise for parental child kidnappers, supported by corrupt sanctuary city judges? Exposing the atrocious, corrupt family court system and the ruthless plague of legalized governmental child kidnapping in the USA and other countries around the world. Why are U.S. family courts so corrupted? It's incredible that the very system you have believed in all your life, that you thought would protect you, doesn't really care about your well-being, nor your children's. For the corrupt family system, it's just a matter of making business to gain as much money as they can. No jury, only the judges rule. Listen to another victim.
Did you ever do anything wrong? Why did your husband succeed in this? What needs to change? How bad is it on you financially?
My entire family insisted that he couldn't take my children away from me because I never did anything harmful to my children. And then in August '07, when they were gone, they finally realized it was all about money and power. I can't afford anything. The guardian ad litem was charging me $250 an hour. The supervision costs me about $200 a week. So they told me to get more jobs if I wanted to see my children more often. The father is much wealthier and has a little more power in Lackawanna County. They said that I told my children to tell a lie, which never happened. I never told my children to tell a lie. And he called us a bunch of liars. The guardian ad litem, no matter what I do, following her recommendations, writes up reports that are just insane. I had to pay $3,000 for a psychological evaluator. This past June 25th, the evaluations were done in 2005. And this year, in 2012, on June 25th, he stated in Judge Munley's office that I have a personality disorder that is worse than men who are serving life sentences for vicious and malicious crimes, and that I cannot be helped.
Who said this?
Ronald Reefus.
He's the guardian ad litem?
He's the psychological evaluator.
Why are the family courts corrupted? Let's see another case.
A sick 15-year-old girl. Justina Pelletier was diagnosed with mitochondrial disease by doctors at Tufts Medical Center in Boston a few years ago and has undergone surgeries and treatments for the illness ever since. Then a little more than a year ago, her parents checked her into Boston Children's Hospital. Doctors there said she did not have mitochondrial disease. Instead, they said she has a psychological condition and that Justina's symptoms were all in her head. That hospital then accused her parents of medical abuse. The state stepped in, and the judge awarded custody of Justina to the state. The court then went a step further, ordering her parents not to talk. But now, they are breaking their silence. Lou Pelletier is Justina's father, and he joins me now. Lou, very good to see you.
Megan, thank you for having me.
Why now are you breaking your silence despite what could be repercussions from this court?
Bottom line is my daughter's life is now at stake. This has been 1 year that she's been at Boston Children's Hospital. She's been tortured physically and mentally. All her medical situations have been totally ignored. Medicine she was on, treatments that she's been dealing with. She is at her breaking point, and we can't stand by anymore and allow this to happen.
You, as I said in the introduction, brought her to Boston Children's. She had the flu. They said, take her there because a former doctor from Tufts is going to know what to do, and he went to Boston Children's. She goes into the hospital, and I told the viewers what happened then. How long did it take, just in terms of the timing, how long did it take for the state to step in and say, you no longer have any decision-making authority over her?
The world changed the day she was there, February 10th. February 13th is when they came in and said, you're no longer allowed to speak to any other doctors. There will be no more diagnosing going on. We're just shutting everybody else out.
1 Timothy 5:8. But if anyone does not provide for his relatives, and especially for members of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever.
Mr. Bowers, you were saying something back in 1992. You were at this meeting. Could you tell our listening audience a little bit about what you heard about the family at this meeting that you were at?
Well, they just thought the traditional family was going to try to replace government and their influence. And so they said, we need to get children away into government programs at the earliest age possible. That's one of the things they were fighting for. They also just said anything we can do to help get women out of the home and working so those children will be available for us to influence in the school system, the better. They wanted to do that. And like the goals from 1958 as well, that was one of their main things. They wanted to break down the family because they realized there's so much strength in it. If you have a strong, healthy family, there's really nothing for government to be doing. I mean, there's no way for them to expand because family is taking care of all the needs and helping each other. And then especially if you add a healthy church to that, then the families that are a little bit poor, they're even helping those families. So together it is a system that is that is the foundation of America. A strong church and a strong family, there's simply nothing for government to be doing.
How can we follow God's commands if our children are unrightfully taken away from us by corrupt family court officials? Child Protective Services, CPS, is a governmental agency in the United States. It's responsible for supposedly protecting children from any harm, responding to reports of child abuse or neglect. CPS is also known as Social Services. The corrupted family court system and the Child Protective Services in the USA are destroying God-loving families for decades without any institutional supervision and against the federal law of the United States and in violation of the UN Convention for Human Rights. Social Services and CPS are the monster who eat up your children, making them believe they have candy for them, like the witch of Hansel and Gretel. This is the case not only in the U.S., but all over the world. Let's see what CPS really does.
A 6-hour-old baby is being taken away by social workers from his mother. It is a forced adoption, and this is footage the social workers never wanted you to see. Britain is the only country in Europe which commonly allows adoption without parental consent.
Adoption is for good, and as soon as we can place a child in a loving home permanently, better for all concerned.
The government's new Children and Families Act is likely to increase the number of cases.
Those who've been social workers for a long time went into social work primarily to support families. The reality now is that they are almost exclusively involved in child protection. And that is a major policy change.
An increasing number of mothers are so frightened they are fleeing abroad, helped by an unofficial network of supporters.
Over in France here, they do not believe me when I tell them that they can take children for emotional abuse, let alone risk of it.
It is now harder than ever for families which need help to stop their children being forcibly adopted.
It's a very, very worrying picture because it means that we're just going to continue on this trend towards permanent removal of children.
Child Protective Services, CPS, is a governmental agency tasked with receiving and investigating reports of child abuse or neglect. The Child Protective Services Agency in each state must identify children who are being abused or neglected, monitor domestic violence that relates to children, and remove at-risk children to a safe environment when necessary. The agency also helps maintain preventative programs and provides children with safe homes. To explore this concept, consider the following Child Protective Services definition. Does CPS really take care of our children? CPS and the courts do not consider the emotional trauma inflicted on the parents and children when taking children away from the parents. The children's emotional well-being, especially, is ignored. Why? Because they are a political institution and not a social service to the community. Mandatory reporters can hide behind the mandatory standing and make falsified accusations and know they are protected from prosecution. Even if the complaints turn out to be untrue, CPS has no desire to investigate why the accusation was made. CPS even uses previous unsubstantiated complaints as evidence of neglect, even if the investigators believe the complaints have zero merit. CPS also allows an investigator to sit alone with a child, even if the investigator is a middle-aged male and the child is a teenage girl. This violates federal sexual harassment laws, but is allowed under state law. This also allows CPS to make claims of statements by the child, even if the child never made them, or allows CPS to withhold any statements the child does make from their report. Legislation is a tool you can use for good or bad. A bill you should know. HB 1121, Child Welfare. HB 1121 was passed during the 2017 Florida legislative session. The following is a breakdown of the new law, which went into effect July 1, 2017, and an explanation of its implications regarding the release of medical records and a new requirement regarding the involuntary examination of minors admitted to mental health receiving facilities. Summary. The bill permits hospitals licensed under Chapter 395 and physicians' offices to release patient records to the Florida Department of Children and Families, DCF, for investigative purposes. DCF agents or representatives can now obtain records without written permission from the patient, but only when the information will be used to investigate cases of abuse, neglect, or exploitation that impact children and/or vulnerable adults. The bill also requires mental health receiving facilities to initiate an involuntary examination of a minor admitted under the Baker Act. This examination must take place within 12 hours of arrival at the facility. Bleeding heart legislation. After being approved by the United States Congress on November 19, 1997, President Clinton passed the Bleeding Heart legislation, also known as the Adoption and Safe Families Act, ASFA, Public Law 105-89. Was this bill that American Congress and President Clinton passed, assigning more money to the CPS system, worth it?
One of the great mistakes is to judge policies and programs by their intentions rather than their results. We all know a famous road that is paved with good intentions.
Child protection is one of the biggest businesses in the country. We spend over $12 billion a year on it. The epidemic of state child seizures is no mystery when you consider the financial incentives to do so. In 1974, Walter Mondale spearheaded the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act. After the bill was passed, Mondale himself commented on how the bill would turn child protection into a child snatching business. The bill provided huge incentives for states to grab as many kids as possible and put them in foster care.
Our theory is that the basis for this is the tie to the federal money. That every time a child is not placed in a home, the state of Kentucky, through its cabinet, is losing federal money.
It's an allegation we've seen many times in our 3-year-long investigation of Kentucky CPS, that instead of trying to bring families together, the cabinet forces adoptions to earn more federal bonus money. And it apparently started in 2004 when adoptions in Kentucky ballooned to 724, while the federal bonus money more than doubled, from $452,000 the year before to more than $1 million.
And across the country, states did just that. the number of kids in foster care began to climb dramatically across the country. Now you have to ask yourself, why would legislation be written in this manner? To create an obvious business incentive to grab as many kids as possible. Why would they write it that way? In 1997, President Clinton passed the Adoption and Safe Families Act, a heartwarming piece of legislation. For about a year prior to the passage of this 97 bleeding heart legislation, I remember being lambasted in the media with stories showing these poor children whose families didn't want them, who languished in foster care, whose hearts were broken, and how the state could help if only they had more money. It was an outright media blitz to create a myth that the reason that 500,000 kids were in foster care was because of bad parents, and that the state was these poor children's only salvation. But if only they had more money.
She says the concerted effort to take children away and put them up for adoption was so brazen, she actually saw someone successfully place an order for children.
So Clinton and his administration did what all politicians and government officials do. They make themselves look like the champion of children, when in reality, the very legislation they write provided more incentives to take kids, provided more money to the very people who are abducting children for profit.
There's a fundamental economic law which has never been contradicted to the best of my knowledge. And that is, if you pay more for something, there will tend to be more of that something available. If the amount you're willing to pay for anything goes up, somehow or other, somebody will supply more of that thing.
Is CPS a child-snatching business? The enforced disappearance of children by government officials is a crime against humanity. The legal term may be clunky, enforced disappearance, but the human story is simple. Children literally disappear from their loved ones and their community when state officials or someone acting with state consent, such as Child Protective Services, CPS, grab them from the street or from their homes and then deny it or refuse to say where they are. It is a crime under international law. The enforced disappearance of a child constitutes an exacerbation of the violation of the multiplicity of rights protected from enforced disappearance and an extreme form of violence against children. There are mainly 4 situations in which children become victims of enforced disappearance. The first involves children who are themselves subjected to enforced disappearance. A second situation occurs when children are born during the captivity of a mother subjected to enforced disappearance. In this case, children are born in secret detention centers, and most of the time, documents attesting to their true identity are suppressed or altered. The third, children are victimized by the fact that their mother, father, legal guardian, or other relative is subjected to enforced disappearance. Finally, an illegal immigrant parental child kidnapper flees to the USA to wrongfully retain and conceal the child from the left-behind parent. With the support of a corrupt family court system, the illegal immigrant child kidnapper receives a perverse incentive by keeping the child as an illegal immigrant in the country, in violation of federal immigration laws and in violation of international human rights laws and treaties. Most often, corrupt and lawless judges of the United States of America collude with parental child kidnappers and against the will of the left-behind parent to keep the wrongfully retained child as an illegal immigrant in the country. This is enforced disappearance in the most brutal form, supported by a judge where the other parent has no contact or access to the child due to the aiding and abetting of illegal immigrant child kidnappers. Family and friends of people who have disappeared experience slow mental anguish, not knowing whether their son or daughter is still alive, not knowing where he or she is being held or how they are being treated. Searching for the truth may put the whole family in great danger. Children's evolving stages of physical and mental maturity, as well as their reliance on adults, places them in a situation of particular vulnerability, and as such, the specific nature of their rights as well as of state obligations when children are victims of enforced disappearance, must be properly understood and underscored. The children victimized by this policy have the fundamental right to their identity as persons and to know that identity. They also have the right to recover the memory of their natural parents and to know that those parents never abandoned them. They have the right to be in contact with their natural family so that the family can nurture and provide continuity to that memory of affection. In cases where such a crime is committed by a judge, the future proceedings between parties must order a reassignment and declare void all judgments. Judges shall be recused and ordered to be disqualified to hear any part of the proceedings. The International Criminal Court against Child Kidnapping sues the U.S. government on behalf of all left-behind parents who have lost their children due to enforced disappearance in the United States due to the corrupt family court system and abuse of power by lawless judges across the nation. All this has dire consequences, like in Phoebe Johnchuk's case, a 5-year-old who was killed by her father because of the neglect of the authorities. Florida Department of Children and Families, Home. Digging through 6 years of DCF files, the Herald found hundreds of children who died of abuse or neglect, whose families had contact with the agency over the previous 5 years, far more than the state reported. The information comes from reviewing death certificates, police reports, autopsies, and interviews. Phoebe Johnchuk, born August 23, 2009. Died January 8, 2015. County, Pinellas. Cause of death, drowning. Manner of death, homicide. Criminal case, John Johnchuk, father, charged with murder. Documents, incident report, parents' criminal history, case report, DCF rapid response report. Before girl's death on Tampa Bay Bridge, a family in chaos. Her story. Until Thursday, January 8, 2015, when Phoebe Johnchuk was hurled to her death from a bridge, the family violence was mostly confined to Phoebe's very troubled parents. Both police and state child welfare authorities fielded reports that John Nicholas Johnchuk and Michelle Nicole Kerr had traded blows, sparred over a box cutter, and used Phoebe as a pawn in an ugly custody dispute. Johnchuk had accused Kerr of stalking him. Kerr said she was scared for her safety around Johnchuk. A kindergartner at Cleveland Elementary School in Tampa, Phoebe will forever be the curly-haired cherub in a purple fairy costume, with purple wings rising from her shoulders and a purple flora tiara taming her dirty blonde hair. 5 times, the Department of Children and Families had received reports questioning Kerr and Johnchuk's fitness as parents. The first report was received in April 2012. It alleged that Johnchuk had used crystal meth, had choked Phoebe's mother, and had locked the then-toddler in a bedroom where powerful pharmaceutical medication was located. Johnchuk already had a significant criminal history, including 6 arrests, either for battery or domestic violence, and a drunk driving charge. Evidence of Johnchuk's volatility was plentiful. The couple's former landlord told an investigator he'd found drug paraphernalia at the couple's home, had found doors kicked in on several occasions, and had been forced to replace windows that had been smashed in by the couple. He described Johnchuk's and Kerr's behavior as very erratic. The 2012 investigation was closed, with DCF taking no action to protect Phoebe. An investigator had concluded there were no concerns for the family, despite Johnchuk's failure to show up for a domestic violence therapy session with his psychiatrist, and his subsequent failure to reschedule it. The agency had another chance to intervene the next year when DCF received a report that Kerr, described as hostile, had abused methamphetamine, cocaine, and alcohol, and had fallen down when drunk. Once again, the agency took no action to protect Phoebe, though the 2013 investigation was closed with verified findings that the violence between Kerr and Johnchuk endangered their daughter. In late December 2014, DCF's hotline received another call. Phoebe was now living with her father, who, the report said, did not have a stable home and was moving from place to place among relatives. Care, too, had largely failed to turn her life around as a parent, the report alleged, continuing to struggle with drug abuse and mental illness. Once again, the report said Care was living with a boyfriend who abused her. The December 2014 report was still pending when John Chuck's own lawyer called DCF one last time the day Phoebe died. John Chuck, DCF was told, was driving all over town in his pajamas with Phoebe in the car. The father seems depressed and delusional, the report added. Agency administrators acknowledge they failed to gauge the seriousness of that report. Shortly after midnight on January 8, 2015, John Chuck raced towards the iconic Sunshine Skyway Bridge in his white Chrysler PT Cruiser when a Pinellas County Sheriff's deputy spotted him. John Chuck stopped the car on a bridge approaching the Skyway, and, as the deputy drew close to him, John Chuck cradled his 5-year-old to his chest before flinging her off the bridge to her death, the sheriff's office said. Phoebe's body was later found in Tampa Bay.
I'm making this video because I've been through a lot and I'm not making this for attention. Attention needs to be brought to this subject. DCFS is trying to take us away from my mom again, and they already did before. We had to live with my grandma. We had to live with my grandma after my dad died, and my grandma, her name was Marilyn Cooper. Her name is Marilyn Cooper, and she abused us, and she made me want to kill myself over and over again. And I told Child Protective Services she's abusing me, and they didn't care, and it took them an entire year before they sent us to foster care to get us away from my grandma, because they didn't care. They want to get us away from my mom. I have proof of this. I need help. If you're in the news, or you can help me, or you're like a famous YouTuber, help me. Okay. So we finally went back with my mom after nearly 2 years of being away from her on March 10th. We got out of foster care. Everything was okay. And when I came back with my mom, I had been sad and depressed for 5 years because of Child Protective Services, because of what they did. They took away my childhood, like literally, like I was 8 when all this started, and I was forced to grow up really quickly, and that's why I'm so mature, as people tell me. But I was happy. I'm happy here. I'm at my mom's house right now. I'm happy. I finally found peace. I was happy. My life was normal. My life is normal when I'm with my mom. Everything just seems perfect. I like to sit. We live in the mountains. I sit in the forest. I meditate. I draw. I'm overall just so happy. I've never been so happy in my entire life. I was depressed most of my life. I was sad because of my grandma, and because my dad died, and because of what Child Protective Services has done to my life. And everything was perfect. I was bullied when I was at school, but that didn't matter because I'm with my mom, and my family needs to stay together. You don't know what it's like, unless it's happened to you, to have Child Protective Services come in and turn your life upside down.
Court Watch posted on YouTube. This video shows how a 14-year-old boy stands up to his abusive and manipulative mother to demand that she respects his informed choice to live with his father. Many children find themselves in situations where family courts have given custody to the parent, mostly mothers, who in many cases are not the better parent. Many children are abused by their sole custodial parent, as was the child in this video by his mother.
I think he told her to consider letting me go.
I have legal custody of you, Parker, and I'm unlocking this car. No, you're my child.
I'm not getting out.
No.
Okay. I'm going to explain it to you also. Okay.
I'm getting you out of the car. Can we ask for the door to be unlocked?
You can unlock it.
Do what?
This is a parent-child situation.
Get out of the car, Parker.
No.
This is a civil issue. Okay. Like you're saying you're following the court order.
Get out of the car.
Mom, no.
This is really the wrong way to do
Get
this.
her arm out.
No, I'm not getting my arm out. You're my kid.
Stop.
You're
Stop.
my kid.
Stop.
No, I'm not gonna stop.
Stop. Stop.
I can't.
Stop.
Ow!
Neither am I.
If I have to use force to get you out.
Okay, that's all I'm saying. It's a civil issue.
This is ridiculous. Come home.
No.
That's what's going on.
I appreciate it. I really did I get my...
Yes, sir. I gave you yours back. I still have hers.
Okay, thanks.
And I'm allowed to do whatever to get this baby out of the car. Can my husband help me?
Please don't. No, get.
Okay, he's
Stop.
a step parent. He has
No.
custody.
Stop.
No.
Get out.
Back up.
Get out.
Me? You just said it.
I know. Let me talk to you. Here, ma'am.
Hang on, Park. Hang on. He didn't say you have to get out.
You ain't gotta step out. Just hold on a minute.
Yes, sir.
Okay. She's your mom, dude.
Yes, sir.
And I understand you don't want to go.
Yes, sir.
Okay. But she does have the right to get you out of the car. Okay. Now, I know you want to go with your dad, and I understand that. Don't get me wrong, I do. Okay. I'm just saying, you're still a child, man. You're 14. She does have the right to get you out of the car.
Right.
Okay, but the whole fighting and arguing and bickering and trying to roll her arm up from the window. I mean, if this is going to turn into a disturbance, we need to handle this a different way. Can we agree?
Yes.
Okay. This is going from civil to disturbance.
Yes, sir.
Who initiated the force?
She was trying to get the child out of the car, which is initiating her parental right. It wasn't technically force.
It's not force?
No, she was initiating her parental rights.
Okay. Is that per law?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know which law that is by chance?
Right off the top of my head, no, but I'm more than happy to go look it up. Okay. I mean, I understand, but like I said, the whole this disturbance turning into disturbance.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's where I get involved.
And I wasn't trying to roll her arm out. I was trying to get her arm out.
I understand. I was sitting here. I witnessed everything. I saw what happened. Okay.
So I was in the wrong?
I didn't say either one of you were in the wrong. I just said this just turning into a disturbance, and that's what we're not about to do.
Okay.
Okay.
I need you to just get out of the car.
So if we can talk about this in the civil way, like adults, we need to do it that way.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
You good with that?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'll let y'all continue this.
There's nothing to talk about. He's adamant that he's not getting out, and I'm adamant that I'm not sending him away with my ex-husband. There's nothing to talk about.
Please.
We can talk about what's going on with why you feel this way in the house, but I am not sending you somewhere where I don't have a good feeling about it, even on your regular visits.
Okay, well, I want him to go in then.
He can't come in and mediate this. That's not his job, babe.
Mrs. Pelletier, right? You can take back and forth and y'all can discuss that way.
I'm trying to get you to do it without...
He doesn't believe in courts or cops.
I'm trying to do it in a less expensive way because I've gone down the expensive route, which has broken me before.
Why don't you go ahead and tell him what you think about police officers?
That has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
You don't have respect for anybody, even your own child.
Completely irrelevant.
You don't have even respect for even your own child to encourage him to handle a situation just impulsively like this. This is ridiculous.
He's been pretty calm until he's been pressured, from what I'm witnessing.
Yeah, I'm sure. From your point of view and the way you'll edit that, I'm sure. Will you mind emailing me a copy?
I'm not going to answer that question.
Will you please email me a copy of that so I have record of it also?
I'm not going to answer that.
Like I said, y'all can handle that a bit in court, and y'all can get it on paper. Y'all can go back to the
It's time to go. The officer already said it's going to be a disturbance, and I'm not going to stop until you're home.
I'm not going to stop until I'm okay.
So you want me to be arrested for creating a disturbance, or
if that's what it takes, Mom? You're scaring me.
I'm not scaring you. To get you out of the car? That's scary. What do you think's going to happen when you go in?
Trying to unlock the door and get him to open the door.
He's a parent. The cop just said he's also a parent that has custody.
Okay, well, I'm not going.
And we'll just have it filed with the paperwork, and then we go about our way. That's my goal. I don't have the $10,000 to put down. I just don't.
There's a term that those that are forced to deal with CPS on a regular basis come to detest. And that term or that expression is in the best interest of the children. That's a catchphrase that's used by CPS to justify any action that they take. And with confidentiality, this is a phrase that they use to obtain funding from state senators. And we've had state senators tell us, we don't understand what that means. Recently, an appellate court judge in Oregon said to the Attorney General representing DHS, who used that expression, you always say that, the best interest of the children. What does that really mean? And in most cases, it means it's in the best interest of CPS as determined by CPS. It's not the best interest of the children. When you have over 1,000 children dying a year, it's not in their best interest.
Children are being taken away from their fathers by CPS.
This is absolutely disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Oh, kiss your daughter goodbye while we take her away. What are they doing? This is shameful. You guys should be ashamed of yourselves right now. Is this what you guys do? Take people's kids away from them? Is this how you feel good at night going home knowing you just took a child away from their father? You guys are pathetic. They're telling him it's all right. Oh, we're just taking your child, but it's okay. Don't mind us. Get a real job!
I just want my babies home. Our next court date isn't until September. I had already started doing counseling and did a psychological evaluation. Of course, I had depression and PTSD and borderline personality disorder. It's like mood swings. I guess when you're home alone every day with no one to talk to and you're just with your children, yeah, you're gonna be depressed or whatever. And when you have a drunk mother and no family, well, family, but family that not that great. I mean, you're bound to have some type of mood. It's just ridiculous. No, I'm not perfect, but no, I didn't hurt my kids. Yes, I could get counseling and do all this. I was in the middle of getting childcare for my kids because my daughter was almost 1. We had moved because someone broke into our house. Look at my other video. And I was going through a lot health-wise. It just doesn't matter. This just kills me even more that I don't have my children. It does. And I don't know what to do. I don't. Richmond, Virginia. As soon as I moved to Chester, during our custody hearing, CPS, which was supposed to help me, took my kids. The pain is terrible. You're with your kids every day, you don't know what to do. No job experience, didn't finish school. My mom's supposed to watch them at nights when we moved over here so I could finish my math for my GED. Couldn't go after they took my kids. Too depressing. To figure out a lot. I started at Amazon, but for 2 weeks I went through Integrity, and then I was so tired on the floor, like, couldn't move. So I started dancing. I want to find another job. Meanwhile, I have no experience. Like, I just want my children. I'm so
Stephanie Klutz statement on YouTube. I am a clean and great mom. Never been addicted to drugs or a drunk. All my children have their shot records. They were happy and healthy girls before CPS took them. Now on visits every Wednesday for 1 hour is the only time I get to feel love and show how much I love my children. I miss them so much, and my heart aches so bad. I am slowly dying. Please help me bring home my girls. I have done YWCA, that is a woman's help group, every Monday. I have attended my counselors regularly. I have a SCAN program starting May 31st, 2017, this year, 3 more days from now, which is a parenting class. The woman who did my SCAN intake referred me to the women's self-help group of domestic and sexual violence. At my counselor's, I told her I was being ordered by the court to see a psychiatrist, which then she, the psych, diagnosed me with PTSD, anxiety, depression, and borderline personality disorder. I don't want medicine, nor believe in it. I was told by them it was okay, and my counselor could work through it with me. I chose to do it that way. At court, CPS did not look into or call to get information on what I had done. I signed a release for them to retain all information. At court, they told me I have to go to a criminal psychologist. I also persuaded the court, because I had to be on medication. Also, to take the kids, they had a program called SCAN, which I went for my intake after court, March 31st, but doesn't start until May 31st. Today is May 29th. Our last court date was May 25th. I had hoped for my kids to come home. Their excuse was that CPS would no longer be involved and would have no control over us finishing classes. This is wrong. The class has a place for children when parents attend. If the courts suggested that program, SCAN, they should know that. National Association of Adult Survivors of Child Abuse. What are the statistics of the abused? Based on the reports we have, it's conservatively believed that in today's society, 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will be sexually molested before they are 18 years old, which means 1 in 5 of America's youth, or fully 20% to 25% of the population. In addition, as we mentioned, we're concerned here at NAASCA with helping to stop all kinds of child abuse, including sexual abuse, violence, emotional trauma, and neglect. And the Center for Disease Control, CDC, believes that close to 50% of our youth will experience at least one of these. In its most recent study, the CDC estimated the lifetime cost to society for dealing with all issues related to the child abuse of just 1 year's worth of traumatized kids is $585 billion, an astonishing figure that obviously repeats each year. Did you know there are over 42 million survivors of sexual abuse in America? Somewhere between 2/3 and 90% of sexual abuse victims never tell. 293,000 children and youth are estimated to be at risk of exploitation. 100,000 are prostituted annually. 90% are abused by someone they know, love, or trust. 20% of child sexual abuse victims are under the age of 8. Most never tell, and some don't recall the abuse. More than 60% of pregnant teens have been sexually abused. 55% of girls living on the streets engage in prostitution. 20% of prostituted girls are transported across state lines for services. The average age of entry for girls into prostitution is 12 to 14 years old. 1 in 7 children who are regular internet users receive sexual solicitations online. 1 in 3 is exposed to unwanted sexual material. 1 in 25 receives a request to meet someone in real life that they met online. 800,000 children are reported missing every year in the U.S., or 2,000 every day. An estimated 200,000 are abducted by family members, 58,000 by non-family members, the primary motive for which is sexual. In the most serious cases, the child is abducted by a stranger and killed. held for ransom, or taken with the intention to keep. Liberty Patriot YouTube channel.
The removal of more than 400 children from the FLDS ranch in West Texas has put Child Protective Services under the microscope.
That case has led others to wonder if they could do that to FLDS children. Can CPS do that to my children?
CBS 42 investigative reporter Nancy Wilson shows us one family who says the same thing happened to them, and 8 years later, they're still trying to clear their names.
We're challenging the constitutionality.
This is the Gates family. Gary and Melissa have 13 children, 11 of them adopted. They saw a need for kids from a variety of backgrounds who need love and a stable home. Imagine their surprise when CPS showed up on their doorstep.
The ends justify the means.
Why? The school called CPS when they discovered the Gates pinned a baggie with food wrappers inside the shirt of one of the kids who was caught stealing. It included a 2-page explanation and who to call if there were questions. The school did make a phone call to Child Protective Services.
How can you take 13 kids?
Gates was shocked to find CPS workers in his home uninvited.
That opened my eyes to a whole new way of government.
Especially when CPS refused to leave.
In my being naive, I really kind of fell back on this Fourth Amendment thing. You know, you're kind of raised that you had protection in the home.
Gates said it didn't matter.
At the end of that day, 6 deputies and 5 CPS officials came into our house and removed all 13 children in emergency taking.
One by one, all 13 of the Gates children were removed from their homes, loaded into a paddy wagon, and taken to foster homes.
That's wrong.
It was done without a court order under what's called an emergency removal. The law allows it only when there's a danger to the physical health and safety of a child, and the need for protection is so urgent, removal is necessary. What was the danger?
The reason they later on said in court is, well, we felt Mr. Gates was uncooperative, and his uncooperativeness with us put the children at risk.
Child Protective Services can take your children too. CPS has come to believe that they are above the law and the Constitution, that they don't need a search warrant to come into your home, label you as a child abuser for any reason, and make you a criminal based upon their opinion alone. Take your children away in a paddy wagon and put your kids into foster homes pending a court hearing, where CPS will try their best to win and permanently take custody of your kids. If CPS loses, they will continue to fight you, slandering your family and listing you as a child abuser in government databases. If you go and search on YouTube, you will find many more videos denouncing the CPS abuse. Here's one last one.
Perhaps it was appropriate that it was Friday the 13th when a family court referee in Lansing, Michigan, issued an order to take breastfeeding baby Bree away from her mother, Maria. Maria and Steve Green have been fighting for their rights under Michigan's Medical Marijuana Act. Instead of protecting them, the law has left them vulnerable to felony charges in Oakland County, and now a hastily scheduled hearing ended up taking their daughter away from them.
I was shocked. I can't, you know, even the prosecutor didn't think it was the right choice to take our baby away. You know, and to say because somebody could rob you, you shouldn't have colored TVs because somebody can rob you. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Why can't I meet you with it at DHS? I'm bringing everything to you. You want to go get a diaper bag and stuff so we'll have everything with her? I'm going to take her.
Are you stealing the baby?
Sir, they have a court apprehension order signed by a judge to take the child.
They can go to the grandmother.
That's all there is, okay? If they want to leave without anything, they'll leave without anything. They're meaning to give you guys an opportunity.
You want to give us a diaper? You want to give us a diaper bag?
Okay, they're not stealing the baby.
Yeah.
I will have the supplies when I get there.
Yes, we're going to try to get in touch with Grandma.
I will have the supplies when I get there.
Okay, can you go get the diaper bag, sir, please? Thank you. Can you go get it?
Yeah, I'll get it right now.
Take my wallet out of it. My wallet's in it right now.
What kind of application does she have?
has the information for our kids.
She says she's allergic to, she has to have contact. She's allergic to disposable diapers. Well, I'm waiting on him right now. We don't want to drive off without it. I'm trying to let him get as much.
Coming back with the diaper bag right now.
You were trying to be very compassionate, but like I said, we have
Unless they're not planning on giving her to my mom. Can I give the rest of it to my mom?
Go back to the office. We're going to try to get in touch with Grandma. We have to do, make sure to do an investigation on Grandma. We have to make sure that everything's clean.
That's supposed to be happening right now,
Okay,
right?
and that's what we're going to do, all right?
Can I get a time frame on that, please?
I don't know. Lori, have you been in touch with anyone in another county? Okay, not as of yet. We're waiting on the call.
So we're going to the office with you?
Lori, are you letting her come up to the office with you? At this time, I think we just need to get the diaper bag and go and I will contact you.
I knew it, I knew it, fucking bitch!
How are gag orders being used in this alleged corrupted family court system? The gag order. Parents silenced. It's a judge's order prohibiting the attorneys and the parties of a pending lawsuit or criminal prosecution from talking to the media or the public about the case. The supposed intent is to prevent prejudice due to pretrial publicity, which would influence potential jurors. A gag order has the secondary purpose of preventing the lawyers from trying the case in the press and on television, and thus creating a public mood, which could get ugly, in favor of one party or the other. Gag orders are being used to keep the corrupted business of family court going on. That way they cannot be held accountable if no one can talk about their cases, which are abusive and demonstrate a lack of investigation and a lack of care of the best interest of the children and parents. It's not honest. It's fraud, and the best interest of the children is not what they're aiming for.
So what you have still happening in courts are very, very criminal, illegal judges trying to support Sharia law rapes and abuse of children. And in one court linked into this video, they have silenced the parents and threatened them with jail if they discuss what happened to their child. And they want that much power over Sharia law, everybody, and to try to hide the truth. And we need to worry about this immensely, because the more silent, what happens is the deep state runs on fear and silence and keeping everything secret and not allowing anybody to speak. And therefore we must speak even louder and let people understand that there are still people and judges in this country that need to be ousted from their position because they are not protecting the safety of children. They want every child broken, damaged, harmed, a medical liability, a suicide liability, hurt forever, and someone they can control. And therefore, we need to call them out and ask that they're removed, because that is not how you rule on the Constitution. And when you cannot protect children, You do not belong behind a desk, a robe, having a gavel, and having a courtroom. You're sick. And there are millions of people that suffer from this fate. But inside the United States, there are judges that are sick and reprehensible, and they hurt victims every day. Some cases are 15 to 20 minutes long, and there are judges that violate human rights to the several hundred a week, and we need to get them out of power. And therefore, I'm putting this article up, putting the link in, and everybody, please comment in support of this child. Thank you.
June 14, 2017. Angry Patriot. One of the obscenest cases of the last decade received virtually no airtime on any of the news channels controlled by the mainstream media. Making matters worse is the absolutely nonsensical decision reached by the judge presiding over the case. In Twin Falls, Idaho, a judge has handed down sentences to 3 boys, 2 Iraqi immigrants and 1 Sudanese immigrant, in a sexual assault case involving a 5-year-old girl. However, we currently do not know the lengths of the sentences because the judge placed a gag order on the victims' parents. It seems that all 3 refugees only got probation via WND. Reportedly, the victim's family is very unhappy with the sentencing. Who could ever blame them? Here's what we know about the case. Be forewarned, the specifics of this sexual assault may be hard to stomach for many readers. In the summer of 2016, 5-year-old Jayla Peterson, who has mental disabilities, was lured by 3 immigrant boys to the laundry room of the Fawnbrook Apartments. There, 2 of the 3 Muslim boys orally and anally raped Jayla, while the eldest boy filmed the whole ordeal. It has been claimed by some who viewed the video that the boys urinated on Jayla via Alan B. West. Jayla was saved from even worse treatment by her grandmother, who removed the boys from the laundry room and began the process of calling the police. The perpetrators are between the ages of 7 and 14. Once the investigation began, the Peterson family received 0 help from the Idaho authorities. In fact, the Petersons were treated as the criminals during the whole ordeal. Janice Kroger, the senior deputy prosecuting attorney, spent much of her time during the case defending the perpetrators rather than trying them, which was her job. Kroger also frequently attacked Lacey Peterson, the victim's mother. Throughout the trial, many on the prosecution team described the 7-year-old Iraqi boy as the biggest victim of them all, via Jihad Watch. During the trial, the assault on Jayla was played down by glowing accounts of how smart the perpetrators are and how they're the ones suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Because of this very biased coverage, all 3 boys were given probation and were only charged with sexually lewd conduct. This disgusting charade of justice calls to mind the Rotherham and Rochdale grooming scandals in the United Kingdom, where native-born white and Sikh women were raped and abused by Muslim gangs. In both Idaho and England, Muslims who routinely harassed the families of their victims were given lenient sentences simply because of the power of political correctness and multiculturalism.